Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you want touch, book a massage. That's what she said. My wife, standing in our kitchen, holding her coffee like a shield, her voice colder than the tile beneath my feet. She didn't even flinch when she said it, just tossed the words into the air like they meant nothing. And for a second, I stood there, staring at the woman I'd once thought I knew, realizing she had just buried whatever was left of us. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I simply looked at her and replied, calm and sharp, "If you want comfort, get a job." The silence that followed hit harder than any argument. Her face flickered, just for a moment, before she turned away. She wasn't expecting me to bite back. Not like that. She had built a marriage where she thought every rejection made me weaker, every dismissal kept me chained. But that day, she heard something different in my voice. Not anger, not pain, finality. I left the kitchen without waiting for a reaction. At work, I couldn't shake the words out of my head. Not hers, mine. I had drawn a line, and I knew once I drew it, there was no erasing it. Her coldness had been building for years. The late nights scrolling through her phone, the constant criticism, the way intimacy became a weapon she rationed out like she was doing me a favor. I had ignored it, convinced myself things would get better, that marriage was supposed to be hard. But in that moment, the illusion collapsed. That night, she acted as if nothing had happened. She sat on the couch, scrolling, half smiling at the glow of her screen, while I sat in silence across the room. The distance wasn't new, but something about it had shifted. This time, I wasn't waiting for her to close the gap. I was watching her sink into it. She noticed. Her eyes flicked toward me once, then back to her phone. Maybe she thought my silence meant I'd surrendered. She didn't realize it was the opposite. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to ask. I was going to dismantle this life with the same quiet precision she had used to starve it. When I went upstairs that night, I didn't look back. I didn't say goodnight. I closed the bedroom door, leaving her alone with her phone and her silence. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in that house for a long time: control. She thought she had won with her coldness. She thought I'd stay chained to her rejections. But she didn't see what I saw. That moment wasn't her victory. It was the beginning of her unraveling. Because when a man stops begging, the game is already over. The next morning, she was waiting in the kitchen. The same mug of coffee in her hand, the same carefully neutral face. She asked if I wanted breakfast, her tone lighter than usual, almost forced. I told her no, poured my own coffee, and sat down at the opposite end of the table. The silence stretched between us, heavier than her words from the night before. She shifted in her chair, glancing at me, searching for some hint of irritation or weakness. But there was nothing to find. She tried to make small talk, asking about my day, mentioning some errand she might run. I answered politely, one word at a time, never raising my voice, never looking up for long. That calm detachment unsettled her. For years, she'd thrived on my reactions, my frustration, my hurt, even my silence if it came with visible pain. But this wasn't that kind of silence. This was something colder, sharper. It was absence. That evening, I stayed late at work. I didn't text her to say where I was, didn't offer excuses. By the time I walked through the door, she was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, the TV off. She asked why I hadn't answered her calls. I shrugged, said I'd been busy. Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing more. For the first time, she realized I wasn't going to chase after her approval anymore. The following days followed the same pattern. She'd leave little openings, little invitations for me to step back into the script she had written for our marriage. She cooked dinner one night, set the table, even poured me a glass of wine. I ate quietly, thanked her, and then left the table before she had finished. Her hand froze on her fork, her eyes following me as I walked away. Later that week, I heard her on the phone in the bedroom. Her voice was sharp, almost angry, as she told her sister that I was acting strange, that I wasn't talking, that she couldn't figure me out. She said she thought I was punishing her. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had spent years rationing affection, treating intimacy like a prize I had to earn. And now, she couldn't handle the taste of her own medicine. I didn't need to argue with her. I didn't need to explain myself. Every moment of silence, every polite refusal, every step I took away from her was louder than any fight we could have had. She thought she could wound me with coldness. What she didn't understand was that I had already embraced it. And now, it was her turn to feel what life without warmth really meant. It didn't take long for her to realize that my silence was more dangerous than any argument. She couldn't read me anymore, couldn't provoke me, couldn't predict how I would react, because I didn't react at all. And when a person like her loses control, they reach for the oldest trick they know, jealousy. One Friday night, she dressed up. Not just casually. She went out of her way. Hair done, makeup flawless, perfume heavy in the air. She announced she was meeting a friend for drinks, her tone deliberately casual. She lingered by the mirror, adjusting her dress, waiting for me to ask who she was going with, where she was going, why she was dressed like that. I didn't. I told her to have a good night, and went back to my book. The shift in her face was subtle, but I saw it. That flicker of doubt. That crack in her confidence. She wanted me to be unsettled, to ask questions, to show even a trace of insecurity. But I had none left to give. When she walked out the door, I didn't even look up. She came home late, heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I was still awake, sitting on the couch with a glass in my hand. She hovered in the doorway, waiting for me to ask where she'd been. I didn't. I turned off the lamp, walked past her, and went upstairs. The silence between us grew heavier than any fight could have been. Over the next few days, she doubled down. She started mentioning male coworkers by name in casual conversation, exaggerating their compliments, laughing a little too loudly at her phone. I listened politely, gave her the same calm nod, then went back to what I was doing. Her attempts to provoke me were met with the same steady wall of indifference. And each time, I could see the panic growing behind her eyes. She wanted proof that I still cared, even if it was anger, even if it was jealousy. What she didn't understand was that indifference is the final stage. Jealousy means you're still invested. Anger means you still want something. But silence means it's already over. One night, she broke. She asked me directly if I even noticed how she looked anymore. I looked at her once, calm and detached, and simply said, I noticed. Then I walked away. No argument. No reassurance. Just the truth she couldn't handle. Because she thought she could control me by withholding touch, by rationing affection like it was hers to give. But now she was learning the truth. I wasn't starved anymore. I was done. And when a man is done, there's no performance in the world that can bring him back. By the next week, her little jealousy games had collapsed into something darker, paranoia. She couldn't stand not knowing where I was, who I was with, or what I was doing. So she started watching me. Not openly, not at first. But I noticed the way her eyes followed me when I picked up my keys, the way she lingered near the door when I left for work, the way she asked questions she thought sounded casual, but were anything but. One evening, I came home later than usual. She was waiting in the kitchen, her arms folded, her voice tight. She asked why I was late. I told her traffic was bad. That was it. No excuses, no elaboration. Her eyes narrowed as if she was trying to read between lines that weren't there. She wanted me to slip, to reveal something she could use. I didn't. I simply poured myself a glass of water, nodded once, and went upstairs. That night, I noticed something else. My gym bag had been moved. Not much, just a few inches, but enough for me to know she had opened it. I didn't confront her. I didn't even acknowledge it. I let her stew in her own suspicion, let her drown in the emptiness of finding nothing. Because what she didn't realize was that betrayal would have been easier for her to process. Silence was worse. Silence made her question herself. The next day, she showed up at the gym. I saw her out of the corner of my eye, standing awkwardly near the entrance, pretending to check her phone. She scanned the room like a detective, as if she expected to catch me in the middle of something. When our eyes met, I nodded once and went back to lifting. She didn't stay long. And when I got home that night, she didn't mention it. She didn't have to. Her desperation had already betrayed her. Her paranoia spread to other corners of our life. I caught her glancing through receipts I left on the counter. She checked my car's mileage, pretending it was nothing. Once, I even heard her quietly moving around the guest room while I was in the shower. Each time, she found nothing. Each time, she broke a little more. And through it all, I never raised my voice. I never accused. I never gave her the satisfaction of proof. I just watched her unravel, one silent move at a time. She thought she could ration intimacy to keep me begging. But now she was the one begging, for scraps of attention, for answers I would never give, for control that was already gone. Because the truth is simple. Once you stop chasing, the person who built their power on denial has nothing left to hold on to. And she was finally learning that. When her spying gave her nothing, she reached for reinforcements. The first call came from her sister. Her voice was polite but probing, asking if everything was all right, saying her sibling seemed worried about me. I answered calmly, the same way I always did. I'm fine. Nothing more. She hesitated, waiting for me to elaborate, but I didn't. The silence on my end forced her to end the call quickly, uneasy. 2 days later, her mother called. The tone was different, sharper, almost defensive. She said her daughter told her I'd been distant, cold, unrecognizable. She wanted to know what was happening. I listened patiently, then replied with the same, even tone. We're fine. That was all. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I left her with more questions than answers. And that was exactly what I wanted. That evening, my wife tried to confront me. She said I was making her look bad in front of her family, that my silence was twisting the narrative. She demanded I explain myself, demanded I tell her why I was acting this way. I looked at her once, expression calm, then walked past her without a word. She followed me halfway down the hall, but eventually stopped. She understood, at least in that moment, that nothing she said could drag me back into her game. Her frustration grew into desperation. I caught her on the phone late one night, her voice breaking as she told a friend she thought I was planning to leave. She said she didn't know how to stop it, didn't know how to reach me. The irony was sharp. She had built our life on withholding, on denying, on keeping me at arm's length. Now she was choking on her own silence, begging for the warmth she had once mocked. The calls from her family didn't stop. They came with different tones, concern, irritation, attempts at sympathy. Each time, I gave them nothing, just a steady wall of calm, polite detachment. And slowly, I could sense the shift. They stopped believing her version of events. They started doubting her. Not because of anything I said, but because of what I didn't say. Silence has a way of making people wonder where the truth really lies. She wanted her family to pull me back, to shame me into reacting, to corner me with their questions. Instead, they started looking at her differently. And she could feel it. The woman who once believed she held all the control was now losing ground in every direction. And I never had to raise my voice, never had to argue, never had to explain. Because when someone exposes their own desperation, all you need to do is stand still. The world will do the rest for you. When her family couldn't bend me, she turned to the only card she thought she had left, seduction. One evening I walked in to find the house dimly lit, candles flickering on the table, music playing low in the background. She stepped out from the hallway in lingerie I hadn't seen in years, her expression carefully rehearsed, like she was acting out a scene she hoped would erase everything else. Once, I might have been disarmed. Once, I might have believed it was genuine. But now, all I saw was desperation wrapped in lace. She came closer, her voice soft, asking if we could start over. I let her words hang in the air, unmoved, and walked past her into the kitchen. The sound of the fridge door opening was my answer. Her face dropped, her confidence cracking at the edges. She followed, her voice sharper now, asking if I even noticed her. I took a sip of water, placed the glass down, and walked upstairs without a word. That night, she tried again. She slipped into my bed, her hand tracing along my arm, her body pressing closer. I shifted away, calm, deliberate, my silence louder than any rejection. She froze, then pulled back. Minutes later, I heard her muffled sobs, the same woman who once rationed affection now crumbling from the absence of it. I didn't move. Pity was just another chain, and I refused to let her fasten it around me. The next morning, she pretended nothing had happened. She smiled too brightly, cooked breakfast, even poured me coffee. I thanked her, took the cup, and left it untouched on the counter as I walked out. When I returned that evening, the cold coffee was still sitting there, a silent reminder of how far she had fallen. Her attempts became erratic after that. One day she texted me long messages filled with promises. She would change, she would do better, we could fix this. The next day, her words turned sharp, accusing me of cruelty, of abandoning her. I replied with the same clipped precision every time. Noted. I'm busy. We'll see. Each response was a wall, and every wall left her with fewer ways to reach me. She thought intimacy was a weapon she could use to reclaim control. What she didn't realize was that the moment she tried to use it, she exposed how powerless she really was. The woman who once said, "If you want touch, book a massage," was now begging for mine. But by then, my silence had already answered her. By the 7th week, all the masks she used to wear had crumbled. The sharp tongue, the cold remarks, the rehearsed charm, gone. What stood in their place was something I never thought I'd see in her: desperation without pride. She stopped pretending she was in control and started begging outright. It began in the hallway one evening. She stepped in front of me, blocking my path, her voice trembling as she asked me not to leave the house that night. Her hands shook when she reached for me, pleading that we could talk, that she was sorry, that she regretted everything. I looked at her once, calm and steady, then stepped around her without a word. The sound of her breath catching as I walked away told me more than her words ever could. Days later, it happened again in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, tears sliding down her cheeks, whispering that she didn't know how to fix things, that she couldn't live like this. Her voice cracked when she said she still loved me. I stood across from her, listening in silence, my face unreadable. Then I turned, opened the fridge, and poured myself a drink. She broke completely then, sinking to the floor, her sobs echoing through the house. I didn't bend down. I didn't comfort her. I left her there, drowning in the same silence she had once weaponized against me. At night, she came to the guest room where I slept. She sat at the edge of the bed, whispering apologies, begging me to come back to her side, just for one night. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing even, as though she wasn't there. Eventually, she gave up, retreating to the master bedroom alone. The sound of her footsteps down the hall was weaker every time. Her messages grew frantic. She flooded my phone with long paragraphs, sometimes apologies, sometimes accusations, sometimes both in the same breath. "Please don't give up on me. I can change. Why are you doing this to me?" My replies were always the same: short, detached, final. "Not now. I'm busy. It's fine." Each message cut off the conversation before it could begin, leaving her spinning in her own panic. She had once believed she could ration affection to keep me under her thumb. Now she was begging for scraps of mine, and I gave her none. Not out of cruelty, but because by then, there was nothing left to give. The woman who once told me to go book a massage if I wanted touch was now clawing at the emptiness she had created. And the cruelest truth was that she wasn't fighting to save us. She was fighting to save herself from the silence that had already swallowed her whole. Her desperation soon slipped into recklessness. She had lost the ability to mask her panic, and now every move she made carried the scent of fear. She snooped more openly, rifling through drawers, checking my phone when I left it unattended, even going through the pockets of my jackets. Each time she found nothing, her frustration grew sharper, her grip on composure weaker. One night, I came home to find her sitting at the dining table with my laptop open. She tried to close it quickly, but not fast enough. I saw the search bar filled with half-typed questions: husband pulling away, signs of leaving marriage, how to fix distant partner. She froze, caught red-handed, her mouth opening like she wanted to explain. I didn't ask. I simply took the laptop from her hands, closed it, and carried it to the guest room. No words, no confrontation, just silence. The shame on her face said everything I didn't need to. When subtlety failed, she went public. She showed up at my office one afternoon, holding a bag of takeout. My coworkers looked up, startled, as she forced a smile and said she thought we could have lunch together. I accepted the bag with a polite "thank you" and returned to my desk without inviting her to stay. Her smile faltered, her eyes darting nervously around the room as she realized everyone was watching her grasp at something already gone. She left a few minutes later, the sound of her heels fading down the hallway. That humiliation wasn't my doing, it was hers. At home, the pressure built. She began confronting me directly, her voice cracking as she demanded to know if I was planning to leave. She begged me to answer, said she couldn't handle the silence anymore. I stared at her for a long moment, then walked past without a word. The sound she made, half sob, half scream, echoed in the empty rooms. After that night, she stopped pretending. She hovered around me constantly, shadowing my movements like proximity could glue the pieces back together. But it only highlighted how small she had become, how powerless. She had turned herself into a spectator, waiting for my next move, And that was when she realized the truth. I wasn't punishing her. I was preparing. My bags were half-packed. My accounts were already separate. The door wasn't just an idea, it was a timeline. Because she thought I'd collapse under her coldness. But in reality, her words had done the opposite. They didn't weaken me, they freed me. The first thing I did was close the joint account. No warning, no conversation. I moved every dollar into my own name. Canceled the card she used like it was her personal lifeline. She discovered it when the cashier told her the payment hadn't gone through. That night, she came home pale and trembling, demanding to know what I had done. I looked at her once, calm and silent, then turned back to my book. My stillness made her words collapse into sobs. From there, the steps became deliberate. 1 week, half my clothes disappeared from the closet. The next, my documents were gone from the desk. Then the spare keys vanished from the hook. Each move was surgical, precise, leaving no room for reversal. She noticed, of course. She stood in front of the half-empty closet one morning, asking what was happening. I told her nothing had changed, but everything had. Her panic turned into frantic attempts to hold me in place. She cooked dinners she hadn't made in years, left notes on the counter with little hearts drawn in the margins, even slipped a framed photo of us back onto the nightstand I'd cleared weeks earlier. I acknowledged nothing. I ate quietly, moved past her notes, placed the photo face down without a word. The silence cut deeper than anger ever could. One evening, she tried to physically stop me. I had a bag in my hand, ready to leave for the night, when she stepped in front of the door. Her voice shook as she begged me not to go, said we could fix this, said she would change. I looked at her, calm and cold, until she finally stepped aside. I walked past her, the weight of my bag balanced, the sound of the door closing behind me louder than her sobs. That night, my phone lit up with message after message. Apologies. Please. Promises. Threats. They came in waves, desperate and unhinged, like she thought sheer volume could drag me back. I didn't respond. Each vibration was just another reminder of how far gone I already was. She had once thought she could starve me of touch, of warmth, of affection, and I'd stay begging at her feet. Now she was the one starving, and I wasn't going to feed her. The truth was simple. I wasn't punishing her. I was erasing her. Step by step, bag by bag, silence by silence. And the closer I came to the door, the clearer it became. She wasn't losing me. She had lost me a long time ago. The last morning was quiet. Too quiet. I woke before sunrise, moving through the house with the same precision I had used for weeks. The final bag was packed, the documents sealed, the keys separated. My side of the closet was empty, my drawer bare, my presence in that house reduced to shadows that no longer belonged there. She must have felt it, because she appeared in the doorway as I zipped the bag. Her voice was small, cracked with fear, asking if I was leaving for good. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for a flicker of hesitation, a sign I might change my mind. There was none. I lifted the bag, walked past her, and set my keys on the counter. The metallic click as they touched the granite was the only answer she needed. She broke then, completely. She followed me to the door, her voice unraveling into sobs, begging me not to do this. She promised to change, promised to be better, promised anything that might stop me from stepping outside. I looked at her one final time, and for the first time, she saw what she had ignored for years, calm certainty. No anger, no pleading, no pain. Just the steady face of a man who had already left long before his body walked out the door. I opened it slowly, the hinges creaking, her voice breaking behind me. She reached out, her hand trembling in the air, but she never touched me. She couldn't anymore. I stepped outside, the cold air of morning sharper than her words, and closed the door behind me. The sound of it latching shut was softer than her sobs, but it carried more weight than any argument we had ever had. I didn't look back. The driveway stretched ahead, the car waiting, freedom humming in its engine. The house shrank in the rearview mirror, just another building, no longer a home. Inside, she would sit with the silence she had created, haunted by the moment she thought she had the power to deny me touch, never realizing it would cost her everything. Because in the end, it wasn't her coldness that destroyed us. It was my refusal to beg for warmth. She said, "If you want touch, book a massage." And I replied, "If you want comfort, get a job." Those words were never an argument. They were a sentence. I didn't disappear. I simply stopped being hers. And now, she was left in the silence, realizing too late that silence was the only answer I ever needed to give. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.